Joining us now, you can check out his fantastic YouTube channel, hardest working guy in Raiders YouTube. Sanjit T joins us now. Daily YouTube videos, cranking it out. You never get bored following you. How you doing, Sanjit? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys, both of you guys, for having me. I really, really appreciate it. RJ, you reached out to me on YouTube. I'm sorry, on Twitter, and you made it happen. So huge shout out to you, and I really appreciate being here with you guys.
Yeah, you were on vacation when I hit you up, and so I thought, yeah, he snubbed us, big tumbing us, no big deal. But no, not the case at all. You turned the phone off as you should, and now we're here. Glad to have you.
Yes.
So like the biggest story, I feels like every single time there's a skill player that's a big name that hits the open market. All of NFL
or potentially
media
hits the
hits the open market. All of NFL media assumes the Raiders are in on it, right? Whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and now Julio Jones, everyone just assumes that Jon Gruden, the mad offensive scientist, wants to just like throw as many pieces of the puzzle in there as possible. What do you make of Julio Jones? Is he going to be a free agent? Do you think he's going to go? So, what do you think he'll go to the Raiders?
Yeah, so Julio Jones will definitely not be on the Falcons this upcoming year. Right. The Falcons, one, need cap space. Julio, two, is not happy. He's pretty much been a loser most of his career with the Falcons, minus that 1 year they went to the Super Bowl. Yep. The Raiders getting Julio, I think other teams probably have a higher chance. I don't know if Julio Jones thinks the Raiders are a winning organization.
Yeah.
Truth be told, I wonder, do you think outside players on other teams even follow the Raiders, right? I'm going to assume they don't, right? I'm going to assume Julio's really invested in the Falcons and that division specifically. But if Julio does come to the Raiders, I think it takes our offense to a whole nother level. If you look at our issues last year, and I know people say we don't have issues on the offense of the ball because we ranked 10th in points per game. But if you guys break it down statistically versus just things like division games versus non-division games, those rankings change. We're not as good against non-divisional opponents. We're better against teams we play twice a year, every year. And I think Julio Jones fixes a lot of those issues. Ultimately, do the Raiders get Julio Jones? What do you guys think?
I don't think so personally. I think that I don't know that Gruden is in that win now mentality. I think he still has that kind of manana attitude where you're like, yeah, let's see how these guys come to turn out, and that's what I was saying earlier today. Also, I don't feel like they have enough cap space and enough players that they want or they're willing to part with right now, because it's in such a rebuild, especially on the defensive end, to be able to create that cap space. And even if they do some finagling with the cap or with Julio's contract, I don't know if they're going to be able to make that fit, or they'll be super tight to be able to make that fit. I didn't want that flexibility to come in later in the year.
I went into this show and before you came on, Sanjit, I came in thinking, all right, I don't want to make the commitment. I don't want to make the investment. But after talking with Soto for 20 minutes, I'm like, now I'm kind of open to it. Like, obviously our receiving core is the worst core of our offense, right? I mean,
absolutely.
The potential is through the roof, right? The ceiling for Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards, they could be amazing, right? Hunter Renfrow, he could keep improving, or they could all be busts. It's certainly possible, right? They didn't show us anything really last season that they were going to be anything, that they're guaranteed to be superstars for us moving forward. Julio Jones is like exactly what we need, right? A giant X-receiver, proven commodity. He's basically a wide receiver, Darren Waller, which, putting those two guys as targets for Derek Carr is chef's kiss, right? But it all came down to, like, are you willing to pay someone roughly $15 million a year, give up a second-round pick for what version of Julio Jones? If he's prime Julio Jones,
no brainer.
Do it. No brainer, right? Is he 75% Julio Jones? Maybe. Do that. Is he 50%? Like that's the thing. 32 years old, coming off injury. What version of Julio Jones will we get?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I've heard some scouts say. Julio Jones has taken a step back. He is not the player he was 2 or 3 years ago. Plus, the Falcons throw the ball a ton, right? So Falcons are going to get Julio Jones his targets, his receptions, his yards. Is he going to have that same impact with the Raiders, right? He'll have maybe a fifth less targets with the Raiders. So will he have that same impact? Who knows, right? I do think a first is too steep for Julio Jones. Even a second, right? You can get some good players in the second round.
Same.
But then at the same time, like, who do you – like, there's no corner – maybe there's two corners in all of football that can one-on-one cover Julio Jones. Yeah. Even if Julio Jones is taking a step back, most players cannot cover Julio Jones one-on-one. So when you consider the fact that he has to get bracketed in order to guard Julio, well, then who do you use to bracket Darren Waller, or do you now need to keep a safety over the top when Henry Ruggs goes deep? At the same time, Hunter Renfrow is very good on 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. Yeah. So there's just so much that I feel like Julio can bring to this offense. And people always talk about, well, let's fix our defense first. But at this point, I think we've made all the investments we need to on the defensive side of the ball. There's really no one we can go out and get to improve the defense. At this point, we're just waiting for that defense to take that next step.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's what's so frustrating about our defense is every single position is either filled by a first-round pick or an expensive free agent. Right? Every single position, basically, right? Yep. Except Max Crosby on end, and he's our best player on defense, right? It's like every position, it's like we're not going to move on from Corey Littleton. He's too expensive, right? Yannick Ngakoue hopefully will pan out. And then all our DBs are like just all first rounders. So it's like, are we going to give up on Jonathan Abram this early? Probably not. Are we going to give up on Damon Arnett this early? Probably not. And that's what the Raiders did, right? Brought back Carl Joseph, drafted 2 safeties. It's like, there's so much depth there where it's not like, all right, we're going to bring a player in to replace somebody, and that's our fix. Essentially, the fix is Gus Bradley going to wash away all the sins of Paul Guenther from last season? That's the fix. It's not really a personnel thing at this point.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely spot on, man. At this point, it's not the players, right? Last season, it was the coaching staff. I think we have good individual players, right? You look at some of the things Abrams done in the past. You look at some of the things Mullen has done, some of the things Corey Littleton was a potential Pro Bowl type of player.
Superstar, but the superstar linebacker.
Exactly. And why is it that he came to the Raiders and Paul Guenther pretty much ruined him, right, last season? Same with LaMarcus Joyner. I think Joyner he showed some flashes last year, right, at times. But ultimately, he was too expensive as well. So, we had to get rid of him. But I do think Gus Bradley's going to fix a lot of the issues. I think Gus Bradley has proven it, right? He was with the Seahawks, and he went to the Seahawks, and he built a defense,
He built
right?
it, yeah.
It's like Paul Guenther never built the defense. Paul Guenther inherited the Bengals, and he kind of just managed it after Mike Zimmer left. At the same time, Gus Bradley's done it 3 separate times with 3 separate defenses just in the last 15 years. So I have all the confidence that Gus Bradley gets it done.
Yeah, I was saying the art of Gus Bradley is going to be to not only put these individual players in positions that they can succeed, but mold that into a defensive scheme. And we all know what he's going to run defensively, but it's what little wrinkles are you going to put for these individual players? How are you going to make Abram more of a linebacker than a safety? How are you going to use flex guys like Diablo and Kuntz? How are you going to use these guys to be able to maximize without endangering the rest of the defense? So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Where are you on the other side of the ball? The offensive line. So when the Raiders dismantled it, essentially at some, Gabe Jackson, Rodney Hudson, Trent Brown. The NFL media was like, oh, they're punting on the season. They're giving up on their strength. And I'm thinking to myself, we saved $35 million. It's got rid of $35 million, right? Trent Brown played half the games. Gabe Jackson way overpaid. Rodney Hudson hurt. That one.
That was a bummer.
That sucked. That sucked losing Rodney. But then you look over and you're like, all right, Colton Miller on the left, he's set. Guard we're set. Andre James at center, we've been told has been the guy to be. And when he played for a game and a half or so, he played fantastic. And then a first rounder at right tackle. I think there's safe questions about the offensive line, but worried about it. I think that's too strong. Where are you?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I think people made a much bigger deal than needed to be. I totally understand the Rodney Hudson. That's the only one. That's the only position, in my opinion, we actually downgraded at. And that's only because Rodney Hudson is a potential Hall of Famer, right? You can say he'll definitely have a shot at the Hall of Fame. And you're going in with an undrafted guy, right? A guy that no one's really seen play. I mean, we've seen him play. I think he fumbled 2 or 3 snaps. The one game he actually played. 2 games. One game he started. The other game before that he played as well when Rodney Hudson got hurt. But I love Andre James, man. I've been saying it since Andre James' rookie season. I remember putting videos out of Andre James saying, I think this guy's going to be the starter. In fact, when the Raiders re-signed Rodney Hudson last year or they extended Rodney Hudson last year, I was actually disappointed. I told myself, I think we're making a mistake. You know, we let John Feliciano walk. John Feliciano
hurt, man.
He's a good football player. You know, we let him walk. I was saying we need to get rid of Gabe Jackson and just let Feliciano start because we save cap, right? We save money. And then we signed Rodney Hudson, and I said, we're making a mistake again, man. Like, he's a great football player, but he's getting up there in age. But I will say this. Rodney Hudson got his ass kicked by Quinnen Williams. And Quinnen Williams is a great football player, right? But Rodney Hudson 3 years ago would not have allowed that to happen. Rodney Hudson was, in my opinion, coming on the downward slope of his career. Outside of that Rodney Hudson to Andre James transition, I think Denzel Good's better than Gabe Jackson. I don't know if you guys agree with that. I don't know what your guys' general thoughts on Denzel Good is, but I think Gabe Jackson was I think he was overhyped a little bit, right? Raider Nation always said, oh, Gabe Jackson's a top 4 guard, which I disagree. I don't think maybe 1 or 2 seasons in the past he was, but I don't think he was that anymore. Trent Brown played in 4 games, right? Like that was we had to do that. We had to move on from Brown. We had to save cap from the offensive line. That was just a necessary cut. Have either of you two watched Andre James, or do you guys in general think Denzel Good is a downgrade or an upgrade from Gabe Jackson?
I have watched Andre James, and in the game that he started, he had the exact same responsibilities as Rodney Hudson. So they expected him to play just like Rodney Hudson. He didn't blow any line calls. Okay. He didn't get beat on any blitzes or any twists, none of that stuff. So any of the stuff that you would see a young center getting fooled on, he passed every single test as far as that goes. And he made all the same calls that Rodney Hudson made. So that's why I'm super confident as far as that goes. As far as Denzel Good, I see Denzel Good as a more athletic, just as tough Gabe Jackson. I think Gabe Jackson, he was susceptible to a double move, and sometimes with a little bit of a stunt in the offense, he had to reach a little. Defensive line stunts. He had to reach a little bit, and that's where he got into trouble. And maybe Rodney Hudson had to come over and slide and help. And you see every time that happens, and someone slides over to help, there's a gap somewhere else. So maybe it wouldn't have been necessarily Gabe Jackson's guy that made the play, but his play shifted the lines where it had to be. It made some issues for the offensive play. So I have no problems with Good at all. And RJ and I just had a conversation right now where he's trying to hype up Derek Carr as this and that. And I'm like, hey, you're saying this offensive line was in shambles last year. They had pretty good players on the line last year regardless.
It was an injury shambles, but they still played together pretty well with what they mixed and matched. Like I'm with Soto basically. Like honestly, the down part of losing Gabe Jackson is Denzel Good is just a fantastic swing lineman. Like you can plug him in anywhere, no problem. Left side, right side, guard, tackle. Like that's where he was so good. It's like literally he's the best guy, best backup for every position. We don't have that anymore. Hoping, John Simpson, Brandon Parker, hopefully these guys like can be these reliable backups. Because if we learn anything about the Raiders offensive line is these guys get hurt all the time. And so again, if I'm confident in our line, I think there's safe questions to ask. Depth, though, is the issue. Like we had so much good depth last season that even though everyone got COVID and got hurt, we still played above average and pretty well. Not as well as the highest paid line in football should play, but still pretty well. Is that depth still there? That to me is the big question.
Yeah, the depth is going to be an issue. I'm confident that the starting 5 from left tackle to right tackle, I'm confident that in total we'll have 8 games missed between all those guys at a minimum. Right? Maybe it's Richie gets hurt. Maybe Colton misses 2 games because of an ankle injury. Maybe Andre James has to come out. Whatever it may be, they're going to miss games. And I don't know, is John Simpson ready to start at left guard or right guard? Brandon Parker, is he ready to play right tackle? Who knows, right? Those are going to be the biggest issues. And I agree with you. Denzel Good could play left tackle, left guard, right guard. Denzel Good plays every single position. Any position we needed him to play last year, he was able to do it. And we don't have that anymore. We don't have a guy like Good as a backup because now Good's the starting right guard.
And if there's one coach that's earned the right to say, just throw guys my way and I'll make it work, it's been Tom
Cable, man.
Like he's proven like, all right, maybe, give me my pieces and I will make it work. And he did it. Like last year's the best example of that.
So what, I mean, you have Denzel Good. He can play guard or tackle. You have Alex Leatherwood, who has played guard and tackle at a high level. You have Nick Martin, who's played center and guard. So you still have some flexibility there. As long as two of those guys don't get hurt, you still have some flexibility to have a decent lineup up there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nick Martin could be a backup guard, right? Not only can be the backup center, but he could also be a backup guard. I think if Alex Leatherwood were to get hurt or something were to happen, I think Denzel Good could switch right there to right tackle. And I think we do have some guards that can step in. I've noticed that John Simpson was primarily practicing the left guard spot, which I think he played left guard all of last year as well. So I don't know if they would consider him a swing guard, right? I don't know if he'd ever come in at right guard. But I do like some of our backup guards. Jimmy Morrissey, our backup rookie center that we took. I love Jimmy Morrissey. I watched his tape at Pitt, and, I see things that I saw in Andre James when he was a rookie in Jimmy Morrissey. So I'm really excited to watch him specifically in preseason.
This is like such an open-ended question, but it's such a weirdly controversial one with Raiders fans. Where are you on Derek Carr? Because Soto hates him, wants him
God
gone.
damn it.
He wants to trade everybody away to get Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. I love him. I think he's not the best quarterback in the NFL, but I think he gets all this hate for things that aren't his fault. Like, oh, he doesn't win. Yeah, the defense has been atrocious. He's terrible under pressure. No, he's gotten a lot better. Like he led the NFL in completions, deep passes against the blitz. Like there's all these like criticisms that he gets that I don't think are fair.
Yeah, so I've been very critical of Derek Carr. If there's a community of Raiders content creators on YouTube. I brought people on my channel. I've been on other people's channels, and Derek Carr always gets brought up, and I'm always on one side of the argument, and the other side of the argument is people love him, and I like Derek a ton, but I don't love Derek Carr, and here's why.
Bingo.
I think Derek Carr is a great quarterback in the sense that we can win with him. He's arguably a top 10 quarterback, right? And he probably is a top 10, but for sure he's like a top 12 quarterback. But I think Derek Carr's biggest flaw is the one flaw you cannot get over, especially once you get into the playoffs. And that is when you pressure Derek Carr, when you start hitting Derek Carr, he panics. He panics a little bit more than he needs to. I made a third down video where I talked about the Raiders. I actually went through every single third down against the Miami Dolphins. We're 0 for 10 on third downs against the Dolphins. One of the things that was happening was they were pressuring Derek Carr, and it wasn't like they were blitzing Carr. They were getting pressure with 4 guys. And then they bring guys and put them on the line of scrimmage, like safeties, and then they drop them back. And Derek kind of seemed lost at times. I do think Derek's biggest issue is under pressure. And then outside under pressure, he doesn't make those plays that you want with the legs. And I'm not talking about takeoff running. More so than if you have pressure coming from one end, step up in the pocket, take 3 steps to your right and make the throw. I don't see that from him. I see him check the ball down as soon as his first or second read is not there. And those are things that I think ultimately, especially when you get into the playoffs, you can't overcome those, right? The Raiders last year, think about this. We finished 8-8. We're 4-2 in the division last year, which means outside the division, we're 4-6. But if you don't consider the first 2 weeks, right? The 2 weeks, Panthers and Saints game, you have 0 film on a basically a brand new team. You have no film. So those 2 games, you can kind of put those to the side because if you guys watch the Panthers throughout the season, they got much better, right? They had a whole new coaching scheme, new system. If we played the Panthers the last game of the seasons, would we have beat the Panthers? I don't know, right? Same with the Saints. If we played the Saints towards the end of the year, would we have beat the Saints? If you don't consider those 2 games, we were 2-6 in the division or non-division opponents, right? I love Carr, but I do think he struggles sometimes against non-divisional opponents. And as you guys know, in the playoffs, we don't play divisional opponents for the most part. We'll be playing non-divisional opponents. ultimately, I do think the Raiders right now don't have an issue at quarterback as much as the defensive side of the ball, right? Another thing is I think the Raiders need to get better weapons, receivers specifically. I think Derek Carr's had his most success with guys like Cooper and Crabtree, right? Bigger wide receivers that could actually make plays. Ruggs and Hunter Renfrow, they're not beating guys at the point of attack, right? Like right off the line of scrimmage, they're not beating guys, right? They need they need time to develop their routes. And we're a quick passing game. So I don't really know what Jon Gruden's doing there. I do think Jon Gruden needs to figure something out and get a true number one wide receiver, right? Like I think Amari Cooper would have been a great player to keep around. I think at this point, he would have been such a huge help for Derek.
You stumbled on, you brought up something that's I've been thinking about, but you vocalized it pretty well, is how like you keep hearing every offseason, even mid-season, how much Gruden is hell-bent on beating the Chiefs, beating the Chargers, beating the Chargers. I need my own Tyreek Hill. I need safeties and linebackers that can cover, you know, we have a rule on this show. We don't mention the name of the tight end from Kansas City, right? To cover that tight end in Kansas City.
The guy that was on the dating show, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. You know who I'm talking about. And so he's so hell-bent on just beating this specific squad that sometimes he puts the blinders on and the non-division games become a lot harder because you uniquely game planned, not just game planned, but built your whole roster just to beat certain guys. And I get it, right? You play them twice. We're in one of the best divisions in football, right? Like the Broncos are one decent quarterback away from being really good. Justin Herbert, I'm afraid to, I'm sorry to say it, it's going to be a stud, good, right? Like AFC West is only going to get tougher. So I get why he's doing it, but you're up a good point how you're so focused on those three teams in those 6 games that the rest of them kind of, like he almost like forgets about it. Like when he wants to scheme on somebody, he does really well. Like when we played the Bears after trading Khalil Mack, like Khalil Mack was deathly quiet. Why? Because Gruden was hell bent on making sure Khalil Mack didn't beat him. But the rest of the season went to shit because he was just focusing on his little pet projects.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. Jon Gruden wants to build like the Chiefs, right? In the sense that he wants his own Tyreek Hill. At the same time, he wants to be able to build to stop the Chiefs. The Chiefs are one team, man. Most teams are not built like the Chiefs. Now, I will say this. If you can build an offense like the Chiefs, right? If you can get Tyreek Hill, which technically we should have with Henry Ruggs, we have Darren Waller. Technically, we should be able to match that production. Yeah. But then the Chiefs also have other quick wide receivers, right? They have, they get guys in the 7th round that run 4.2, right? And we don't have a lot of that. And at the same time, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. And you can't, you're not going to build like the Chiefs unless you have Patrick Mahomes yourself. Derek Carr is not Patrick Mahomes. Ultimately, if we could build like the Chiefs, great, right? But we're not the Chiefs. We don't have what the Chiefs have. That's a great point. I never thought about it that specific way, that Jon Gruden kind of has his blinders on in that aspect. But I will say this, right? I think by the end of this year, we'll have a bigger picture of what our true issues are. If Gus Bradley gets us a top 17 defense, we're not in the
if
playoffs.
If we're an average defense, dude, we're trouble. We're trouble. Like, you know this, Sanjit. Like not just the Raiders have had a bad defense, like historically terrible, like
Absolutely.
In the record books bad. Yep. And still we were 500 this last season, 7-9 before that. Like that's insane that with that bad of a defense, it's been like respectable, like semi-decent, respectable seasons. If we're an average in 2016, when we were, 12-3 before Derek Carr got hurt, he was talking about him being the NFL MVP. There was talk of that. We were potentially could have been a 2 seed. We were only the 20th best defense in football. Not even average, still below average. And still we went 12-4 before, and then lost Derek Carr. Like an average, if Gus probably give us an average defense. Oh my God, I'm doing backflips in my hallway for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Another thing is we need turnovers. All right. You can have points. You can allow 20. You can be the 25th team in points per game. Mm-hmm. Turnovers is the difference, right? We were, I think, 20th in 2016, but we're like number 7 in turnovers. Yeah. Turnovers is key. How many turnovers did we have last year? Like 7 or 8, like in total?
And they were like gifts. Something just falling into Eric Harris's arms, like that he didn't even have to work for. Like they were gifts.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be a big thing is we need to force turnovers. I think Gus Bradley's going to be the guy, man. I think his system, the way he draws it up works. I think he's a good coach. He's well respected. Honestly, the shitty part is he's only going to be here for 2 to 3 years, and then he's going to get a head coach job somewhere, right? If he has success.
Man, if he gets the Raiders to, like you said, a 17-ish around there, people are going to be knocking down his door.
He deserves a statue in his honor if he can get the Raiders like a better than an average defense. That's the thing that like people just don't grasp of how bad the defense has been and what this team's capable of. If it's just average, like again, 20th ranked defense, and we were 12-4 that season. You know, I mean, and that's what I said before when like the defensive coordinator search was going on, like right after Paul Gunther got fired and those last couple of games. I was like, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I want to be the defensive coordinator for the Raiders because all you can do is go up. Like the defense has been so terrible. If you're just decent, if you're below average, just regular below average, instead of travesty in hell below average, that's a massive improvement. And then that's going to get people paying attention. It's like, oh, you pulled the Raiders out of the depths of hell defensively to something maybe respectable. Like that's superhero shit. This should be parades for you in Vegas.
Yeah. Well, so here's another thing though, right? Is like in my opinion, going into the offseason after last season, I was saying this, that we need to cut some of the more expensive offensive linemen, specifically Trent Brown and Gabe Jackson, and we need to replace those guys, and we need to use that money and invest it on the defensive side of the ball. We didn't invest a lot on the defense, right? Just Yannick Ngakoue, I think, is the only guy we really signed. I guess Solomon Thomas. And then we brought guys back like Kendall Vickers. I guess Quentin Jefferson's another guy we brought in. But then we drafted a ton of guys. But my point is we got cheaper on the offensive line. So is Derek going to get pressured more now? Is he going to get hit more? And what happens when that happens, right? When Derek Carr gets pressured more, what's going to happen? Is our offense going to take a step back? Are we going to go from the 10th best offense in points per game? Are we going to become like the 17th or 18th best now because Derek Carr's been pressured more? Those are going to be the questions that are going to get answered this year.
Yeah, I don't hate Derek Carr as much as RJ wants to put that narrative out there.
You want him dead. You want his whole house world to burn down and all his worldly possessions.
Nice. I never said any of that.
Smoke. Yes.
No. What I am saying is I have two issues with Derek Carr. He is way too risk averse.
Yep.
And that shows up on third downs and it shows up in the red zone. Okay. And he is not good at making plays outside of the offense. Yep. And just like you said about getting pressure, you have to make plays outside of the offense. He locks in on his primary receiver a little bit too long, and that doesn't give him the chance to go to a secondary receiver. So it's main receiver, drop down. Main receiver, check down. And those are the issues that I have with Derek Carr. RJ wanted to shove in my face, oh, well, he's, number 2 in the league against and throws over 20 yards, and he had like the second fewest in the NFL. It's like, well, he doesn't throw the ball deep enough. He needs to be able to push the ball down the field more, number one. He's too risk averse, and it's like you don't lead the league by almost double in sub 30-yard field goals if you're good in the red zone. It just doesn't happen. Those are like, 30 yards and less, like the 11, 12-yard line?
Isn't that more Gruden, though, than Carr?
RJ, come on, man. Like,
isn't that more Gruden than Carr?
When are you going to give it? When are you going to put the onus on Carr, man? Like, we have to demand more of everybody.
All the time I do.
All the time.
We haven't even brought up my biggest criticism of him, Mr. Fumble-Rooski. Drops that ball all the time. That's my biggest criticism.
Okay, look, he doesn't fumble nearly as much as he shits the bed in the red zone. Number one. Even if he throws interceptions half the time, that's still 7 points over 6 if you kick 2 field goals. Throw the fucking ball, and you have one of the best big receiving targets in the NFL, and you don't get him the ball. That's my shit right there. And if you want to say that if he's good enough for you, then you go ahead and find and you go ahead and root for a good enough team. I don't want to root for a good enough team. I want to root for a great team. That's what I want. And that's where I get pissed off.
Derek Carr should overrule Jon Gruden's play calls.
Oh,
gets
God.
the play call.
Is
then
Jon
says,
Gruden
nope,
throwing the ball in the red zone?
Sanjit, where are you on this?
You see where I'm
Talk some
going
sense in
crazy?
Soto, please.
You see where I'm going crazy? With
He's going to have a heart attack.
So I agree with Juan 100%. 100%. I'm sorry, RJ.
Don't be sorry.
Oh, Juan's 100% right, man. I'll go back to that Dolphins tape because I just did a film breakdown on it like 2 or 3 days ago. But Derek Carr, man, he does lock on. And people blame Jon Gruden. Like anyone that wants to defend Derek Carr puts the blame on Jon Gruden. Jon Gruden has had multiple top 10 offenses in the NFL, right? Jon Gruden has proven that his offense works. It's not his offense that's holding anything back, right? His offense designs a play, draws a play up, and Derek Carr has to make that play. Derek Carr has to throw the ball. But at the same time, if the play's not there, then Derek Carr needs to step to his right or to his left and make the throw. I can show you like 7 plays, and I was going to do a video on it, but then I decided not to because anytime I do videos like that of Derek Carr, I tend to get a lot of dislikes and unsubscribers and stuff like that. But I can show you like 7 or 8 plays where
well, you'll have Soto jerking off to it on his laptop. So you got so much hate. You got that other side to it.
I get so much hate. I get crushed.
Yeah.
No, I can show you guys at least 7 plays in which Derek Carr gets pressured and he throws the ugliest. Like he'll just throw the ball up. There was a play against the Dolphins, I think on second down, where a guy came and hit Derek and like he stepped out of it and there was no pressure, but instead he just threw it up and he threw it directly to one of the Dolphins defensive guys who did not expect it and he dropped it. But it would have been an interception. There was another play against the Cleveland Browns where he got pressured by Myles Garrett. He stepped up and he straight threw it directly to Ronnie Harrison Jr., who dropped the pick 6. Mm-hmm. And I have a ton of plays like that. And it all comes back from the fact that he gets pressured, right? And I don't know how you feel, Juan or RJ. Do you guys think – I know RJ, I guess, would probably say no. But, Juan, do you think Marcus Mariota would be a better option than Derek Carr?
I think Marcus Mariota has his faults as well. I think that he would give plays a bigger chance of succeeding when he gets pressure, like you're saying. I think his ability to not only run, but the defense knows his ability to run will break down the secondary a little bit sooner and give him the ability to make more plays. So that's where his strength lies, whereas Derek, if everything works out well on the play and the play runs the way it's run, you have Jon Gruden designing the play. And I'll say it up front, as predictable as Jon Gruden is with his play calling and then with his sets and with his formations, it still works, right? Yep. So if everything works out well, that's when Derek Carr shines. But like you said, when you go against non-divisional opponents or you go into the better defenses in the playoffs, it's not going to work out like that. It's not going to work out as well. So that's when someone who has more of the traits of Mariota is going to come through. Don't get me wrong. That ugly late fourth quarter interception that Mariota threw against the Chargers, that's the trade-off that you get. But yeah, I think it's, if you could put them both together and take the best qualities, you have a superstar quarterback, but unfortunately they're two separate people.
Yeah. Like Marcus Mariota would be quarterback for the Raiders for about 6 games before Jon Gruden killed him in his sleep. You know why? Jon Gruden wants a Derek Carr, wants like a robot that just like do this, bam, 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 follow my game plan, execute it perfectly. Marcus Mariota, who wants to like make stuff up as he goes, wants to scramble like crazily. I know Jon Gruden says like he wants that in his quarterback. I don't think he does. I don't think he wants to be a guy that just like decides to run or plays backyard football. Like that would drive Jon Gruden through the wall. I thought like, earlier in the offseason when there was talk of like Russell Wilson wanted to move and get traded to the Raiders, Jon Gruden would pull out all of his hair with him as his quarterback because he's just constantly ad-libbing and doing what he wants. That's not like Jon Gruden hates that. He wants a computer with an arm, and that's not Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, that's a good point. So one of the things that people always bring up with Marcus Mariota is that play against the Chargers in which he threw the interception. People don't consider this, but I think Zay Jones after that game, or maybe in that week after that game, said it was his fault as to why it was an interception. Zay Jones was running he was routing a route in which he has the ability to make an adjustment. He can keep running or he can stop. He stopped, and Marcus Mariota thought he was going to keep running. Those type of things get fixed when you have 4 years in the system, right? Like Derek's going into his 4th year in the same system. Marcus Mariota, I don't even think he was healthy in the beginning of the year. Didn't he have COVID or some sort of injury?
He didn't practice with the team until
he got
week
signed
5.
with a lot of injuries that the Raiders didn't know about. So he sat a long time.
Yeah, so like, people always say, oh, well, Marcus Mariota didn't do good or whatever. I think Marcus Mariota had a great game against the Chargers.
So did I.
You look at how many, like I think his first pass of the game, he literally stepped up in the pocket, ran to his left, and then threw it to, I don't know if it was, I think it was Foster Moreau for like a 17-yard gain. But he made an off-script play, right? Derek Carr would not have made that play. Derek Carr would have checked it off to Jalen Richard. I'm not saying Marcus Mariota's a better passer of the football than Derek Carr, because Derek Carr is a great passer of the football. But I think for Jon Gruden's offense, I think Marcus Mariota, if he had 3 or 4 years, the same way Derek Carr has already had, I think Marcus Mariota can execute the offense perfectly fine. As many times as Marcus Mariota would make a mistake, right? Rather it's, he tries doing too much and he fumbles or whatever it is, that many times he'll also actually score a touchdown in the red zone, right? He'll take off running, or he'll give Darren Waller the opportunity. The Dolphins game, which is the third time I'm bringing it up, but just because I just did the film study, we're 0 for 10 on third downs in that play. 3 of those 10 third downs, we had Darren Waller one-on-one on the left side of the field, and we had 3 guys on the opposite side. So Darren Waller was single covered, and Carr did not throw it his way even once. He didn't even look that way, not even once. You can't blame Jon Gruden for that, right? That's on Derek Carr. Jon Gruden can design a play, but Derek Carr has to actually throw that pass. I say all that having no issues with Derek Carr as a starter this year. I think if the defense gets fixed, then Derek Carr will, if he did what he did last year, I think we're in the playoffs.
Well, one thing Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota share very much, and that they're both like, their teammates love them and they're great leaders. And that showed in OTAs this season, where it was like 84 of the 89 players on the Raiders were at OTAs, which was awesome. We had with Richie Incognito talking about it after OTAs, like, yeah, we officially voted that we weren't going to do OTAs, but then we said we're going to, right? And this is a great example of like the core leadership group that's still on the Raiders, and the fact that they know that it's all these young guys, all these brand new guys. A lot of young guys are going to have very big responsibilities, right? Right tackle, free safety, et cetera. And how these guys are all just gonna come together. How much do you get out of OTAs? Because I'm already like getting super hyped about it, right? We're not even like regular like training camp yet. I'm like, oh yeah, everyone's at OTAs. Kids, buy your ticket to the Super Bowl. We're going, right? How much can you realistically get out of an OTA?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to consider. First and foremost, Gus Bradley's implementing a brand new scheme, brand new system. The secondary coaches, the linebacker coaches, all these guys are coming in. So from that perspective, it's very important, right? They're going to get a new playbook. And I'm sure all the guys already have the playbooks, but when you have questions, when you're installing that defense, the run fits, all that good stuff, you can ask at OTAs, right? You can set it up however you want, and you can ask those questions. So from that perspective, I think it's great, right? You can learn all those things. You can ask all the good questions. At the same time, I think it's very important that Casey Hayward comes in and Jonathan Abram and Trayvon Mullen and Damon Arnett get to know him, meet him, and say, hey, let's go for lunch. Let's go hang out. Let's get to know each other at a deeper level, because those are the guys that come onto the football field and they're having fun. They're competing, but they're like with their brothers out there. And I think that goes a long way, right? If you're so comfortable with the players around you, you're going to perform better, right? You consider all those things. At the same time, I think it was Max Crosby that made the comment that week 1 came around and I didn't even know who the defensive tackle was. I had never met him because we weren't able to have OTAs or, training camp and all that good stuff, right? Like coming week 1, I didn't feel comfortable with the guy next to me. Like that could be a huge disadvantage to any player. I think OTAs is very, very important. And I think for like the GM, for the Jon Gruden specifically as well, we saw David Irving not be brought back. And I don't know if David Irving was ever at OTAs. Someone told me he did show up to day 1 of OTAs and he was out of shape. That and a couple other issues was the reason why he ended up getting cut. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I do think the coaches also get to see Jonathan Abram come in and say, hey, we told you to bulk up to 220. Where are you at weight-wise? PJ Hall, where are you weight-wise? And if you're not there, you're going to cut him, right? I think that's important from that perspective. You can see what the guys are doing, how they were training, and all that good stuff.
Damon Arnett, that guy looked freaking huge now. He put on some weight.
Was it 15 or 25?
Like 15 clean pounds, man. Like he looks like the same ab-wise, but he looks a little bit thicker up top.
Yeah, man. You can tell he's talking to the really buff guys in those NFL weight rooms. Like, hey, how'd you get so big? I've got a couple tricks. I've got a special serum that might help you out. As long as it's on my team, baby, that's all I care about. Make sure you check this guy out on YouTube. Sanjit T, hardest working guy on YouTube. when it comes to working for the or covering the Raiders. Sanjit, this was awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate both you guys. So thank you.
Hey, Windbags, if you want Darren Waller to catch 20 touchdown passes this season, don't be afraid to click those subscribe, like, share, and comment buttons. Plus, your comment could be featured in the next What Up, Windbags?